To think that we went through the same class together for 2 years when some of these horrible incidents happened. All I can say is you really are a remarkable man, and I'm honored to know you, and it's just great what you are doing now to create awareness. This was a message sent to me by my primary school classmates almost 20 years later. And when I first saw this message, I was really grateful and happy that he took the effort to send me this message. Reason being because I felt relieved and validated by what he wrote to me in my decision and choice to go down this path of disability advocacy to make the world a better place in whatever small parts that I can contribute to. My hearing started to worsen more significantly throughout my lower primary school level. But from primary 1 to 3 or 4, I still didn't really need to wear hearing aids. There were things that I used to be able to hear and I couldn't really hear that well anymore. And from what I could recall, every year I had to go to for a hearing checkup. And if I remember correctly, that was when the audiologist told my father, who accompanied me for this appointment, that my hearing was worsening. And I may need to wear hearing aids one day. And this one day came when I was primary 4. I don't recall having a very big reaction to it, because after all, it was quite a gradual thing. It's not as if I had a very severe accident and I got my disability overnight. And therefore, it didn't really hit me as a very heavy impact back then. I remember the audiologist was teaching me how to wear the hearing aid, and I was struggling with it, to be honest, because it was something totally new to me, and it took me quite a while to comfortably put on the hearing aid by myself. So I remember when I wake up that morning to prepare for school, I almost forgot to wear the hearing aids. So it was my mom who actually reminded me. She said, "Hey, you never wear your hearing aid." I was like, "Oh yeah, forgot." Then I went back to my room and put on my hearing aids. I went off to school thinking that it would just be another day. But little did I know that things would change for me dramatically, and things would just get worse from there. So previously, even without wearing hearing aid, some of my classmates were bullying me already. To be honest, I don't really know the exact reason why, but what I speculate is could be I was a very small sized kid back then at that time. I find that I couldn't really gel well with them, so probably they were looking at me as an easy target for bullying. For example, they would just snatch my water bottle away. They would throw my bag around the classroom. They would also, for example, put sharp things on my chair, so that when I sit down on my chair, I will feel a very sharp pain. When we go for activities together, such as physical education classes, sometimes when we play games or sports that require forming a team, they would intentionally leave me out to the last to be picked. Or even give me roles that nobody wanted, such as a goalkeeper. And when I was a goalkeeper, they would intentionally kick the ball very hard at me. One of the very bad nicknames that my bullies called me was Katua, which is cockroach in English. Probably because back then I was very tan, and also very small size, so they called me that nickname. For some time, I knew they were referring that to me, but I mean, cockroach to me, it was very insulting as well. Even though technically they are very hardy and survivability is very strong, But to me back then, it was a very insulting word. Yeah. And they also called it in such a way and tone that they were obviously insulting me. Yeah. So I hated it, and I tried my best to ignore it whenever they said it. Yeah. Then came one day when the teacher were asking us to do something, or asking for volunteers to do something. Then some of the bullies started to call kaswa or cockroach. They would go and do it. So the teachers was quite confused for a moment and say, who is cockroach? Yeah. And then the bullies said my name. Yeah, Winston. Yeah. So because everyone was looking at me back then, and I felt a lot of pressure on me at the moment, and therefore I just stood up and basically volunteered for what the teacher wanted. Thinking back, it might have been a mistake, I don't know, but I guess in a way that action made me admit that I am cockroach. Yeah. So from then on, the nickname stuck with me for a very long time, and it was something that I had to endure. Yeah. Then I went off to school, thinking that it would just be another day for me, where I just listen to the teacher to learn whatever I need to learn, and also probably be bullied by the bullies for the usual things. Yeah. So I remember when I first stepped into the classroom, my classmates started to look at me, or rather look at my ears, with a very strange look. Yeah. But probably also because the hearing aids were very bulky at the time, so it was very obvious. Yeah. And it was back in the 1990s, so there was no such thing as a Bluetooth earbuds. Yeah. So it was also something very new that my classmates didn't see before. So some of my classmates started to ask me, what am I wearing? So I told them, oh, it's a hearing aid, and I needed to wear them because I needed to hear better. Yeah. And shortly after, those bullies who were bullying me back then, they started to become more aggressive. Yeah. So they would call me nicknames like Deaf Boy, which I hated back then. Yeah. Because things weren't very inclusive back then, so there was no such thing as disability awareness or appropriate terms and expression to use. Yeah. So I hated the term deaf. Yeah. So I took it as it's personal insult when people called me deaf back then. Yeah. So the bullies got more aggressive shortly after, and one of the most painful things that they did was actually they would yank off my hearing aid, and they would throw the hearing aids to each other and force me to play monkey to get the hearing aids back. So back then, I remember when they first yanked off my hearing aids for the first time, I was really shocked. Because despite the bullying that they did, I didn't expect them to target my disability, or rather to target my hearing aids. I watched them, throw my hearing aids to each other, and it took a while for reality to sink in. Yeah. And the reality was two things. My hearing aids were very expensive, and I didn't want them to damage it. If not, I would get punished by my parents or my father because he paid for it. Yeah. The second thing was I needed them to learn to hear things around me and all this. Yeah. So I started to chase after my bullies around the classroom, trying to get my hearing aids back. And I didn't successfully got them back on my own. I only got them back because the teacher stepped into classroom, and the bullies handed me back the hearing aids as if nothing happened. Yeah. So when I got back the hearing aid, I was contemplating whether to inform my teachers about it. But I thought back, and previously I complained to my teacher, and it ended up the bullying got worse. Yeah. So I decided not to tell the teachers anything. Based on what I could remember vaguely is I could hear laughter around the classroom. Laughter towards me or laughter towards what's happening, I'm not too sure. Yeah. After school, I went home and I just locked myself in a room as per usual. I just cried into the pillow. But this time I had a new question for myself, which is, why do I have this disability? That was the first time that I actually asked, why do I have this hearing disability? Because it felt like I was the only person in the entire school that has a disability. It felt like no one else was hard of hearing, no one else was wearing hearing aids, or no one was using wheelchair or whatever. It felt like I was the only person with disability in the entire school where there were hundreds of students. So it felt very unfair to me. Why was I being bullied for my small size and now I'm being bullied for a disability that I have? Yeah. For a while I did hesitate, or rather I did thought about whether should I just go to school the next day. I decided to go to school. Yeah. I think mainly because of one reason, which is my parents. Yeah. I was afraid that if I skip school, my school would inform my parents and then I would get it from my parents. Yeah. So my parents were the tiger parents back then, and I was disciplined for telling them that I was bullied at school. From what I can remember, my parents would scold me. Sometimes they would even take out the cane to cane me as well, because they thought that I was being mischievous in class. And also in the report book, sometimes at the end of semester, the teacher would write that Winston is very mischievous. Yeah. But thinking back, I think I was being mischievous because I craved attention. Yeah. I wanted people to notice me. I wanted the bullying to go away. That's why I did the things that I did, trying to get attention from others. But probably the teachers misunderstood that I was being mischievous. So when this report book went to my parents, they believed what the teacher said. Yeah. They believed the teachers rather than me. Yeah. So they took out the cane to discipline me and told me to just sort of just man up and focus on my academic. I wouldn't use the word hate, but I didn't feel close to my parents back then. Yeah. I know that they love me in their own ways, but because of how they reacted to me telling them that I was being bullied, I feel that I couldn't connect with them. Yeah. So that's why I didn't tell them that I was bullied. After a while, I just stopped telling them anything about what's happening in school. So as time went on, I suddenly felt that people around the school knew me. When I walked past people who were not my classmates, I could feel like they were staring at me and pointing at me, and they were whispering to each other. So you could probably say that I became famous for the wrong reason. But granted, they didn't really do anything to me, but it left a very deep impression on me, because I felt that it was a that point in time when I became paranoid about my hearing aids. Yeah. Sometimes when people were standing close to me, and back then people weren't using mobile phones. Yeah. So people were just standing around or just looking around. And it made me feel very uncomfortable. Yeah, especially in an enclosed space like a bus or the MRT. Yeah. So from the side of my eyes or peripheral vision, I will keep wondering whether people were looking at my hearing aid. Were they looking at it and wondering why is this boy wearing something like that? Yeah. So over time, this forms a very deep-rooted paranoia in me. Yeah. And I was afraid of being judged. And I was ashamed of having to wear hearing aid. Yeah. So much so to the point that there were many times that I would rather take out my hearing aid and not be able to hear things around me compared to having that feeling of stress and anxiety, paranoia all the time. Yeah. To be honest, I felt very sad when not just from the bullies' action, but also some of my other classmates who initially were not part of the bullying, they started to call me the names as well, yeah. Especially the cockroach nickname. Yeah. So it made me very sad that because of this whole thing, some of the friends that I thought were friends, suddenly they were not friends anymore. I don't know, thinking back, probably it could be they were afraid of being bullied by the bullies as well, just for being friends with me. I don't blame them now on hindsight, but back then it really made me feel very sad. I think one thing that I'm still very grateful for is I still managed to have a very, very good friend back in primary school, and he was literally my strongest pillar of support. Yeah, because I could not confide in anyone else. Yeah, my parents, my siblings, my teachers. Yeah. Probably because he was also one of the smallest size guy in class, and he was also sort of being bullied by the bullies as well. Yeah, they also called him names. Yeah. He still remained as my friend, even though a lot of my other classmates stopped befriending me. Yeah. So I could talk to him about what's happening. I could confide in him about the issues that I face. He may not have the solutions to every problem that I have, but it made me very grateful that there is at least one person that I could confide in. But knowing that I have someone out there who is willing to be my listening ear, yeah, provided me with that much needed comfort and relief. Yeah. Despite all the challenges that I faced in school, there were only two ways about it: give up on myself or just focus on my studies. So I chose to focus on my studies. Yeah. Because I at the back of my mind, I knew that okay, I got these very close friends that I could rely on. I have a family who still loves me. Yeah. So I focus on my studies. But there were challenges to that. So mainly listening comprehension as well as oral examination. Yeah. Back then, I needed to start lip reading already. Yeah. But I didn't know that I was lip reading. Yeah. So for example, sometimes the teacher would walk to the back of the class while talking, and I would start to struggle to hear what the teacher was saying, yeah, compared to when the teacher was standing in front of the class. At a point in time, I thought that because I was sitting in front of the class, so the teacher was also very close to me, and therefore I could hear the teacher louder and more clearly. The issue started to come when I had to take the listening comprehension examination. because back then the listening comprehension came from the radio, and there was literally no lips for me to lip read from. Yeah. I could not pick up most of what was coming from the radio. I had to guess a lot of the answers based on whatever I could pick up. Yeah. And listening oral examination as well, it was a struggle, mainly because I was bullied a lot back then. So I started to become more and more withdrawn. I started to speak a lot lesser, and therefore it started to affect my ability to speak clearly. So my pronunciation was affected a lot as well. So when it came to oral examination, I struggled to enunciate properly, yeah, and it affected my grades. Yeah. So to the rest of my peers, I think listening comprehension, oral examinations were literally two of the easiest things to score. Yeah. But for me, it was a massive struggle. So therefore, my grades for the languages, yeah, English and Chinese, were affected, yeah, because of these two components. But I put in my best effort for the written theoretical component to try to boost up my grades. Yeah. So I'm very thankful that for my PSLE, I managed to score 259, yeah. Which to me it was a very tremendous achievement, yeah, given how much I struggled in school due to the various reasons. Yeah. I still remember a few years after graduation, we were arranging for a gathering, yeah, among the classmates from primary school. Yeah. So at that time, I was feeling quite conflicted whether to attend this gathering. Yeah. Because to be honest, even though it has been quite some time since graduation, the trauma and experiences were there. Yeah. Yeah, so I was wondering whether to go for it, and in the end, I went for it. Yeah. Because to me, I wanted to let go. Yeah, I didn't want to hold on to this past that could probably affect me in the future. So I went for it. So some of my bullies were there. Yeah, they came for the gathering. But I was there early, together with a couple of the classmates, yeah, and the very close friends that I was with. Even though at the time I was happily catching up with them on how they have been since graduation, but at the back of my mind, I kept thinking to myself, how would I react if I saw my bullies walk through the door? Yeah. And then they walk through the door. We look at each other, we exchange friendly greetings. At a point in time, they didn't really address the issues of bullying. It felt like all of us were just taking things like nothing happened. Yeah. And I also didn't really have the courage to go up to them and to talk about it. Yeah. So things went on as usual. We had our dinner, had fun activities. Yeah. But it was always something that I felt was still unresolved. Yeah. It was only later on in life when I started to advocate for disabilities in this space. I started to share my story on online and on social media, and some of my bullies actually texted me, yeah, and they apologized for what they did to me back then. There was something in me that didn't want to be seen as weak, yeah. So that's why I didn't give up, yeah, even though there were many times that I wanted to give up. Yeah, I didn't want to be seen as weak. I didn't want the bullies to be the winner, because I have given up. I have succumbed to whatever they were saying about me. If there's one thing that I could say to my 10-year-old self, it would be things will get better. Yeah. There is always, the light is at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. So I think this is sounds very cliche, but this was literally what happened, to my 10-year-old self. He didn't give up at a time. Yeah. He knew that there were people loving him. He has a very few close friends supporting him. Yeah. And he found something to focus on, which was academics. Yeah. In a way, having a goal in mind, having something to focus on, allowed him to sort of forget about the bullying for a moment. Yeah. So at the end of the day, bad things will end, good things will end. So it's really just a matter of changing your perspective and making the best out of it. Yeah, learning from the experiences and becoming stronger out of these experiences.